Hey man, what's up?
Hey, how you doing, mate?
I'm doing good. Hold on, give me a second. I gotta change my sound settings.
No worries. The guys in chat can give us some feedback on how those audio levels are. They should be reasonably even, I think, by the sounds of it. Just gonna turn this
There we
game
go.
sound down as well. And let me just health bars always, standard hotkeys. Awesome. Okay, cool. So we wanted to work on our system for self-improvement and analyzing replays as the main focus, with TvT kind of as the stuff that we use to look at, right?
Yeah, I'm working on building TvT, and I've got a couple of points in it that I don't like, or I've been thinking I need to change them. And I was kind of hoping you could kind of talk me through, like, where do you, like, when you watch your games and you see where they went wrong, how do you kind of decide what the best point to focus on is? And how do you kind of set yourself goals to improve? I mean, I know that like I should be focusing on the first thing that went wrong and not, item 10 down the list. But
Mm-hmm.
um, sometimes I feel like, my attack timings are generally not effective. And I'm not sure if that means I need to change timing or if I need to change composition or and how I make that decision.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me just start some new notes here at the top of the document. You didn't already start some, did you? Lower down, because I know you like to move it down a bit later, but it's okay for me to just type it here at the top. Yeah.
Yeah, you can type at the top. I'll probably rearrange stuff afterwards. I've been
Y-
using it for my own notes on Go.
Awesome. I like that. Make it your own for sure. So as long as you're happy to just move it down, reorganize it, whatever makes sense to you, that should be sweet. Okay, so we want to talk about replay analysis, self-learning, etc. So your question there was mainly about what do we prioritize, right? Like how do we choose what we should look at first, right?
Yeah.
How to choose what to focus on. Okay, so I mean, that really comes down to what we feel like doing, and we can kind of vary it, right? So one week we can be more focused on one thing, and the next week it can be something else, right? And that can be partially done by our own inclination of what we're motivated to improve at. Man, I really want to get better at my engagements, so maybe we'll just focus a bit more on that in the replay analysis and stuff, right? And map that out a little bit more. Other times we might do other things. So, there's nothing wrong with just going by what you're most motivated, what sounds the funnest to work on. Don't get me wrong. But outside of that, definitely what do we want to focus on? So, I mean, let's get into a replay. So we've got some meat in front of us, and that's the best way we can do this. So shoot me an invite to
Awesome.
party. I'm in chat channel Piggy and also Pig. And
You're on NA right now,
yep,
right?
yep.
Could you make a transfer to EU,
Oh,
possibly? I've got a
okay, cool.
replay on
You've been.
EU that I think
Oh,
would
no
be good.
worries. Yeah, you've been laddering EU a fair bit.
Yeah, I'm on an EU team, even though I'm an NA player, so I ladder about equally on both.
Cool. What's your ping like over there? Like 120, 140?
Yeah, about that. I honestly, at my level, a quarter second delay on commands is not is not
Yeah.
costing me games.
Go to chat channel Piggy because I think Pig, as always, is. Oh, that's you. That's a pretty high rank you got there.
Yeah, I don't know what happened when the leagues reset, but if you're on a really
Oh,
high rank,
it just jumped up
uh,
yesterday, right?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
No
yeah, I
worries,
went
no worries.
from Diamond 1 to Masters 2.
Yeah, it's bugged at the moment. It's put everyone up about two tiers. There's a lot of people going, "Yeah, I got there," and I've kind of been trying to rain on everyone's parade, and people are like, "Why are you being mean?" And I'm like, "No, no, no. I'm trying to dampen your expectations. That's all, guys. Remember, if you were Diamond 2 one day and you wake up the next day and you didn't win 30 games while you were sleepwalking, all in a row, you're not gonna suddenly jump to two tiers, are you? So yeah, it just seems to be a bit bugged with where the boundaries are. So a lot of people have got these league borders. I'm just reminding everyone, you know what? If someone else gets a border that they don't deserve, it doesn't take anything away from your own achievements. It's like, as always, we know where we are. MMR takes away the mystification from ladder, so we know where those boundaries normally are roughly. So whether or not you got a promotion, we can always say, hey, when I actually crack 4600 MMR or 4500 or whatever it is for Masters 3, then I can actually feel friggin' proud and know that I've actually done it. even though the border already said it.
Yeah, personally, I set goals for myself around MMR numbers and not the color of my border because those boundaries changed.
Exactly. So, all right. In terms of what should we focus on? Well, first of all, let's talk about what can we focus on, okay? So just broad categories. What are some, and start with whatever you probably think is the most important, but let's just riff off top of your head. What are some things you think you can focus on analyzing replays? What are some categories of things we can analyze and look for?
Well, my engagements are shit, to be perfectly honest. So that's one area where I feel like I could use a lot of work. Um,
Yep.
I also feel like my ability to, well, I think I mentioned last time we met that my APM is just generally very low. I think with Terran, I average 130. And early game, if I'm harassing them at the same time they're harassing me while I'm trying to stick to my builds with Terran, is actually surprisingly hard to stick to it. So I make a lot of mistakes in the early game. So at
Okay.
some point, I've just kind of accepted that that's a cost of the APM, and I haven't figured out how to raise my own APM higher than it is. And then thirdly, I guess I'd say not getting supply blocked. It's basic, but it's what I've been working on recently.
Okay. So these ones are a little bit more specific. Engagements is fantastic, of course. It's just a general category. So another one is
Command center upgrade complete.
your build. So build.
Yeah, there's some general
And
build stuff. I would point out, like, if you look at the build on the sheet I pointed out, I've got a couple of sections highlighted in yellow, and it's because I'm not sure if those are what I want to be doing. I do a 3 Reaper, 2 Hellion opening, and I always poke at 2 Reapers to just kind of see what they're doing and maybe put on some pressure if they're playing a bit too greedy. But I constantly get caught in midfield, like this guy who's doing like a 5 Reaper, 4 Hellion opening, and I can get punished really severely, and I'm not sure what I want to do about that.
so that's a specific problem. Okay, so we're going to give that a different category. So notice executing harassment and macro shifting. So basically swapping between harassment and macro at the same time, shifting between and organizing and managing those points. That's part of your build, right? Especially in the early stages, right? Because if you're always microing a Widow Mine drop and forgetting to start stim behind it, well, we can organize that, right? We can be, I gotta remember right at this point, after I borrow those mines, let's start stim. We can build triggers in there. That's part of tightening up our build because it's something we can repeat over and over again. So you were just talking there about a problem point, right? So what we're talking about is, problem situations. And these are very matchup and opponent dependent and strategy dependent, right? So like you said, okay, with this TvT build, you're a bit unsure of how to deal with it. So with that, basically what do? We go problem. You do a 3 Reaper, 2 Hellion, sometimes get out Reapered and Hellioned, not sure how to deal with it. Okay, so, that's a problem. As soon as you've identified it, you can start coming up with ways to deal with it. Maybe you have a way of getting a single Reaper scout in to check what's going on and choose whether or not to harass. Maybe you have an SCV scout that checks their natural timing, and that says, there's ways we can address that. But let's stay focused on the system. I don't want us to go deep on TvT. Ignore what's happening on the screen. I want your attention on our document right now. Infinitely more important is the system that we are applying here. So we want to start making sure we see things in these categories, because the moment we get too focused on just this matchup or just this game, we get focused on small rewards, right? It's like, I don't know, it's the guy who's digging his own little hole in the battlefield to hide in, and he doesn't realize that the rest of the army is retreating and he should be leaving, right? Like, it's a terrible analogy, but basically we want to keep our eyes on the big picture and the system that's in place, and that's infinitely more important than a 3 Reaper 2 Hellion adjustment in TvT, because that's going to carry over to literally one situation and one matchup. It's a minute percentage of our overall games, right? It might be a bit more in the current meta, but maybe a month from now, that knowledge is pretty much worthless, right? If the meta changes or your build order changes. So let's think about the situation. We've got engagements we can analyze. We can analyze our build. So that's checking all the tiny details of our builds. That's another thing we can do, right? Every tiny detail, every timing. We can also look for supply blocks, right? We can look for floating money. delayed buildings. These are all just specific little subpoints within that. Delayed buildings, forgotten upgrades, etc., etc. We can just analyze all that stuff. So we can remove that not getting supply block. That's all part of kind of making our build a little bit better and trying to, you know, refine parts of it to fix all those little problems that inevitably pop up as a StarCraft player. So we've got problem situations. We've got build. We've got executing harassment. And then shifting back into macro and managing both of those together. We've got looking for supply blocks, floating money, delayed buildings, forgotten upgrades. We've got problem situations that arise individually and basically addressing those individually. So I guess let's go deep on that while we're here. 3 Reapers, 2 Hellions. So you said, okay, I go gas first, I go a 3 Reaper, 2 Hellion, but sometimes you like dodge each other on the map, you don't know what's going on, etc., etc. You know, they run in with 1 more Reaper or 1 more Hellion, you get pooped on, right? So with your build order, are you pulling workers off gas at all here to get that command center down?
Nope. Stay
Okay.
on gas.
So this build order is a little bit awkward because of that. We are floating a lot of gas. Did we talk about this in the previous time? I'm trying to remember what we focused on last time.
No, we focused on PV or
It was
TvT.
TVP,
so,
wasn't it?
Yeah.
What was the
floating
style
gas
we
helps
ended up
me.
with? Did we end up doing a crazy style? I'm trying to remember. Was it a
We
mine?
did like
It was the Widow Mine thing?
Yeah, Widow Mine drop into like a 4 racks Widow Mine all in kind of thing, pulling the boys and stuff.
5 racks, right?
Oh yeah, 5 racks. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, cool. Like a pretty typical game plan then. The nice decisive push. Okay, it's just refreshing my memory. Okay, so
Is under attack.
with this build order, in terms of just tightening it up, notice we've got a ton of gas just sitting there. And likewise, if you just look at these build orders, if you want to get your command center that timing, normally you'd pull 1 worker off each gas after the factory starts, just to get that command center a bit earlier. And then we'd kind of put those back on as our minerals are saturated. So we can see it's a real small adjustment to the build order. Now, you might just be like, that seems a bit complicated, and I might forget to do that. So maybe you just have a guy off gas from the start. Let's take a look.
I'm sure I could squeeze that in.
Yeah, I think that works. Drop factory, pull 1 off each gas, then resaturate. Okay.
Yeah, I usually move into like really quick tanks and double Raven. So the bank always felt like it helped me there, but I see the point. Assuming I take a quick 3rd gas on my natural, I could probably still swing all that at the same time.
Yeah, that's going to be what we'll aim for, is a quick 3rd gas on the natural. So good thinking ahead there. So pull 1, and it's not that much gas you lose. Remember, there's the 3rd gas miner, so it's the one that kind of spends time hanging around. Off each gas at factory starting. Add 3rd gas on natural. I'm going to say 4 minutes right now, but we'll come up with a tighter marker because I normally do it kind of as my starport's halfway done or finished, but that's a different build order. I don't know exactly when you'd want it with this build. I haven't been doing this build order that you're doing for a long time, so we can change that. I'm going to add a question mark next to that. Okay, so that would make your build just a little bit better. Now, other than that, you're very blind, right? We don't really know what's going on at all. Now, we just moved out despite seeing the Reaper behind us, so we just weren't paying attention there, which is a bit nasty. Now, it can be nice to poke across, but I imagine right now most people are also doing 1 basey openings like you. So I think a much safer way of doing this is going to be we want to kind of get some information of what the hell we're going up against. We don't want to just be derping across the map with no information, right? I mean, the problem is you're going across blind, right? So do we want to SCV scout and just keep that hidden behind their natural to check if they're going for a command center at the same time as us? Just go home if they went for a really fast CC? Like, what build order do you actually want to poke across the map with these Reapers and Hellions? Like, what build do you want your opponent to be doing for you to really be like, I should really move across the map to do this?
I mean, that's a good point because I don't even know. You know, I think that at some point
Command center
people
upgrade
just
complete.
are a little too greedy and it can punish that. And I'd hate to miss the opportunity to punish that. But yeah, for the most part, I'm just going in blind, and I don't think there's a build I'm specifically trying to, other than general greed.
Well, you just touched on a fundamental, so that's really good. You said if someone's too greedy, you can punish them. You can get some damage. So off the top of your head, what sort of opening do you think that would be really good against?
I mean, a really quick low ground natural with just a barracks and
Okay,
no factory behind it.
So just a barracks gas, low ground CC, right?
Yeah.
Especially if their bunker's not up, or it's like, or they just skip the bunker entirely. That's so against any one of those really fast expand builds, it's great, right? So if we let's think about exactly what's going on in the matchup, and this is something I think you're at the level where you want to be doing this more and more, where you want to start thinking about what your opponent's doing, right? Your build is a starting spot, but as soon as you're running into fundamental problem points with, I don't know if I should do this, or this part of the build gets awkward, you really need to start understanding, okay, like what are some of the core things we're going up against in this matchup? And, you know, what do we want to achieve with this? And start trying to just get a bit more of an understanding, which is a directionless sort of learning, right? You're not going, I need to analyze exactly how many Reapers he has at 3 minutes so I can choose what to do with my Reapers. It's literally just saying, let's understand what players are doing so I can then make an educated and pointed decision about what I'm doing, right? So kind of let's understand the context a little bit more is something we can do here. So
Add-on complete.
let's understand the context a bit better. It's kind of something that we're doing here, right? So we've got barracks gas openings in TvT. We've got
Add-on.
barracks, gas, low ground CC. We've got your opening, which is the 220 CC, 2 to 3 Reaper Hellion opening. And that, of course, has a delayed starport because you're getting that CC. And then what's your opponent doing in this game?
Yeah, he's doing some sort of weird one base battle cruiser rush. So I don't know if this is the best example.
Ignore the battle cruiser. You're jumping to the end. Look at the opening.
Yeah, he's doing a one base 1-1-1.
It's not that different to your build, though. There's 1,000 people that will do this in TvT. Could be a Hellion drop. It could be a fast Banshee. Could just be faster Ravens into a later CC. Could be a Liberator flying into your main while Hellions and stuff run into your natural. Could be 1,000 things. But essentially, at its core, what is this build order? It's just a 1-1-1. So it's going to be even later command center than you, right? So if we think barracks, gas, low ground CC is kind of the most economic,
Enemies are under attack.
Yeah.
yours is somewhere in the middle.
This is all making me realize I need to scout it. We haven't gotten there in the replay yet, but eventually I get it. I take a look at his base and I see him building his second command center, and I assume it's his third. And I
Really?
make a couple of bad decisions because of
Complete.
Yeah, so I mean, that's just, we're not thinking about what the options are in the matchup as well, right? So once we map this out, we kind of go, oh, like suddenly I know what to look for almost intuitively, right? Or at least we start to get that understanding, but we can also then start to come up with much better reactions. So a 1-1-1 would normally build a CC, what is this, 330, no, 345. Yeah, that's probably about standard. So 1-1-1 into 345 CC, and that's obviously, this is the most aggressive. So now we've got an idea of, okay, you're doing a middle of the road build in the current meta. So now it's really simple. We see a low ground CC at a minute 45, you know, barracks gas CC. Cool, we're just going to go straight across the map and pressure. We don't have to worry about anything. We see someone who goes for a command center at 2 minutes 20, the same as us. We know it's mirrored build orders. We can try to be aggressive or we can play defensive. Either way, it's up to how we want to play, right? It's mirrored build orders. So it's just personal choice. If we play against this build order, we want to be even safer than usual, right? We want to be like, oh, okay, like this, you know, there's things that can hit me, right, that I've got to be prepared for. And maybe that means we build a bunker just to make sure we're super safe. I would always leave a Cyclone in the main if I was playing defensive against any of the more aggressive, the most aggressive or the middle ground build orders, because Liberator or Banshee or something could come in. But yeah, if you had a bunker here, you know, that would have saved you for sure. If you didn't panic when the BC came in, that would have been big as well, of course, because we kind of ran our tanks away and just got blindsided. But I mean, overall, like, we are way ahead at this point in the game. We just have no idea what the hell's happening in the game.
Command
So
center upgrade
in
complete.
terms of that scouting, we can obviously scout which one of these builds it is, by whether or not the command center is building at 2 minutes 30. Because if they're not starting at 2 minutes 30, then they must be doing a later build, right? A later CC.
Yeah,
They must be
that
doing the
makes a
most
ton of
aggressive.
sense.
So how do you want to scout for that? Do you want to sneak your first Reaper across the map, rely on your second Reaper, and then your Hellion to defend at home? Do we want to hide out an SCV, send an SCV across, maybe around 2 minutes, like as our Reaper's popping, and send it, say, go to everyone's camera? And then try to get it behind the natural. It's a little risky. Might get caught by a Reaper coming across the map. We could send an earlier SCV, but that's a bit awkward with the gas first opening. I think with your opening, I would probably try to find a way to get the Reaper across the map on a different control group. And I would poke in at 2:30 and like see if I can get that info. Or I would try to initially send the Reaper across and try to hide it behind the natural. But it's really up to you. What do you think? What do you think you want to do here to get this information in TvT?
You know, I generally choose the safer path just because, again, low APM. If something happens unexpected, I mean, I tend to miss stuff or react too slowly. So I don't know enough to know which is the safer path. It seems like an SCV is too fragile, and I have to arrive at a time where he's got units that can kill it quickly. So maybe early, the first Reaper goes.
Yeah, if we did the SCV, we'd probably have to send it earlier, I'm thinking, where it kind of sits behind the natural from like before the Reaper even pops out, basically.
I've been trying to get in the habit of doing a 17 SCV scout in all matchups.
Okay.
So I could give that a shot and see how it goes.
17 SCV scout and hide behind natural if they don't expand at, you know, a minute 45, basically. Like if there's an SCV down there trying to go for the expansion, you can like harass it a little bit and then obviously run home before the Reaper gets out. But you know it's an expand build at that point. Whereas you see nothing, you're like, oh, you go in and you're like, oh yeah, there's a factory going down straight away. There's 2 gases. Okay, I'll go hide behind that natural. We can check back a little bit later. Hide behind natural if they're on double gas. Move in to check at 2 minutes 30 if they have CC going down.
Command center upgrade
Cool.
complete.
Awesome.
Okay, so now we've got these 3 openings. So against the most economic, attack with Reaper Hellion. Against the middle ground, they're doing the same build as you. Do you want to play aggressive or defensive?
I think I choose defensive.
Okay, defend. And against the most aggressive, like in this game, the 1-1-1.
Yeah, got to be defensive on that one, right?
And are we going to add a bunker? And if so, when?
That's a good question. So in this build, I actually went tank then Cyclone, but I generally try to do Cyclone and then tank, specifically for Banshees, Liberators, and stuff like that. I would assume that the tank after the Cyclone is out too slowly to defend a push. So I probably need to throw a bunker in, huh? I don't know when the timing is that hits.
Sorry, just got a little bit distracted by a pop-up. Sorry, what were you saying when what hits?
Well, so if he's doing a 1-base 1-1-1, I expect some sort of push out. Probably, I don't know what the timing is on something like that.
Could be literally anything. So, I mean, he could literally just come straight across with his first Liberator, right? Or Hellions or a drop or whatever. So, I mean, you're just going to have to base it on your own experiences. But I would say in general, you should be able to match his ground units, right? It's just the starport unit that's going to be added in there. So, it's only when that starport unit hits that he actually can have more shit than you, right? If you've both been building Reapers and Hellions, and then you've built a Tech Lab and a Cyclone, but then that Cyclone needs to go in the main to deal with, say, the Liberator, right? So that's the point where, oh, he's got a Cyclone at the front of my natural. I don't, because it's in the main defending the Lib. Okay, so that's probably the point where we want that. So off the top of your head, it's a 1-1-1, 1-base build. When do you think that first starport unit can get to your base?
I don't know, 4 minutes? 4:30? Somewhere in there?
Let's say 4 minutes. That sounds like a good enough guess. Might be slightly faster than that, but we'll go off that. And then until someone actually hits us faster than that, we'll just assume that's correct. Don't have to be exact, right? You can always change that on the fly, easy. So we want that bunker. At what time to be ready at 4 minutes?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know what a bunker build time is.
29 seconds. I just clicked it to check. I cheated. I was like, I think it's 29, but it is. So basically you want to build that 3:30, yeah?
Yeah, I could probably just throw that down right when my second CC finishes, because this one finished right at like 3:33. So timing lines up pretty nicely.
Hells yeah, natural SCV can build it. Awesome. So suddenly we understand what the hell's going on. So I want you to take a step right now to go back and think about what just happened. You said, I have a problem where sometimes the Reaper Hellion gets caught out and the armies pass each other, and it was all kind of vague and mystifying because it was a feeling of problems that have arisen, but you were looking at them in the void of your build order as if it was interacting with nothing else. And when you're first learning the timings of a build, that's totally fine. You're learning your basics, right? You're just trying to figure out how shit works, okay? I gotta remember my barracks, I gotta remember to make my Raven at this time, etc., right? But the moment we start getting more comfortable with the build order, we're past the basics, and it starts to feel a little more natural. We really need to take it to the next level of understanding. Okay, if a problem arises where we lose a skirmish, we need to look at it and understand what the hell just happened. So if we're playing against a Protoss and 3 Oracles and 3 Adepts dive into our natural, or 3 Oracles and 5 Adepts and jump on our couple of Marines and kill them all before our units can get down from the main, we go, we've got a problem. Okay, let's figure out what the fuck this build is from my opponent. Let's try to understand what they were doing to get to this point. Oh, you know, they cut workers. Like in this one, it's like real simple, right? It's, oh, that command center is way later. My opponent didn't pull off gas at all. It was just, you know, pumping units as fast and as aggressively as possible. Okay. Once we've got a bit of context, we can do that. So I guess what we want to learn here is whenever a problem arises and we don't immediately understand all the pieces, you know, we don't immediately know what to do, we always want to look for that context a little bit better. And then we want to break it down in understanding of kind of how our opponent's playing as well. And we should be good from there. Really good reaction on the auto turret and the Marines, by the way. If you'd simply left your tanks down there and had them siege, you just crush this.
Yeah, I like unsieged the moment he teleported in. It's quite unfortunate.
Yeah, because we just had no idea what was going on, right? So it was like, oh, this is just a real awkward game. But we go back to the start and we kind of go, oh, there's a bunker there. We're just camping. Cyclones in the main. We're chilling, super relaxed. Have a tank sieged in the natural, maybe a tank sieged in the main because we have no idea what's happening. That attack's not going to do anything if you've got a bunker and a tank sieged at the front. Especially if you bring your Cyclone down as well. So that's awesome. That's very reassuring. Your opponent did a funky little attack, and now our set response would kind of slap that down. So obviously this game's going to be a massive shit show from here. Since you're down at 9 SCVs, you maybe could make it close, but
I actually could have won this game.
Really?
If I didn't have a couple of bad fights in the mid game, but yeah.
Oh my. So I guess our opponent's gonna present us with some opportunities then, because we should be dead.
Yeah, he tries really hard and makes some bad decisions trying to finish me.
Yeah, these are some awkward attacks from your opponent. Oh, we panic on siege. I think you panic on siege on the cliff there, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I thought you shot first, and then his tank killed yours, and I was super confused.
I actually didn't have vision of it.
Oh, you didn't have
It was
vision.
just out of range. I thought I might be able to get out before the next shot came in.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So anyways, we want to keep ourselves focused on kind of, okay, what do we analyze to improve, right? So the other thing is obviously just looking at your opening and going back through. In terms of the build, I mean, something we should always bring ourselves back to every couple of weeks, at least, if not more, is looking at the fundamental execution of your build. You know, is my depot on time? Is my barracks on time? Is my orbital on time? With this build, is my second and third factory or my second and third barracks on time? You know, there's always certain important points that we tend to be sloppy at, and we want to just kind of habitually refocus on them and improve them. And I guess the analogy for that is passing the ball in soccer or football. Like, you know, there's always like the most fundamental drill. If you do martial arts, maybe it's like you're just doing some basic combo of like punching and kicking, and you repeat this like 10 billion times over the course of playing that sport or doing that competition. And for StarCraft to be like a good StarCraft player who stays focused on the correct things, that's all just like, did I build my thing on time? Did I do that on time? Was I hitting my SCV production? We can we can go to the corner of the map and go 4 times speed and just watch that production tab and go, what was my SCV production like? Wasn't too good this game. Obviously, there's reasons for that, but just bringing it back to some of those things and reminding ourselves to look at those fundamentals of, am I passing the ball correctly to my teammate? Or in StarCraft terms, am I building my shit correctly? Which is, those fundamentals of macro, we always want to bring our mind back to there every now and then and kind of keep our eyes on it. And we can see this game, for instance, it's like that SCV production. I've gone to the corner of the map. I'm in the bottom right. I'm watching none of the action. I'm just watching that production tab and that SCV production. And that is going to give me so much information about kind of like, oh, okay, where is my macro at in this game and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I can definitely use a lot of work on that for sure.
Cool. Awesome. So do we want to go into another replay? Do you want to talk about this one? I mean, I guess we can give it to you and kind of say, okay, like, what do you think? The end of a game like this where you lose your rhythm, you get back to a position where you could have stabilized and potentially won the game. I mean, what did you think after the early game stuff that we've kind of talked about? What else do you say? Next time you find yourself, for whatever reason, in a scrappy game like this where everything's thrown off a little bit, is there something we do differently here? Did you feel like you lost track of what you were meant to be focusing on at this stage of the game? Did you have a good idea of what you were focusing on? Like, what do you look at as, what can I improve to take more control at this stage of the game?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I generally, I don't know when to attack and when to stay defensive. I mean, here I push out, right? I decide I want to not just sit back. I take half my army away, and I get attacked on 2 fronts and just get completely smashed. And this is where it goes completely off the rails because we go into a base trade at this point. But I don't know how to make a judgment call on whether or not I should be sitting back, whether or not I should be split attacking, and how much of my army I should peel away. I feel like tanks are one of those units where their usefulness is exponential with how many of them you have. 1 tank or 2 tanks can get easily overwhelmed by a medium-sized force, while 7 or 10 tanks can kill almost anything.
Hells yeah.
So I don't know how many tanks, like how safe is 3 tanks and 10 Marines, and when should I be moving and when shouldn't I be? So every time I take a look, I try to kind of assess that, but I don't know. I feel like I'm not making much progress.
Okay, so this is something where you can always take that to the most basic level of, how safe is 2 tanks and 10 Marines? Try to answer it.
I mean, that doesn't sound very safe at all.
Against what? What's the context? What do we like? What does 2 tanks and 10 Marines beat if they're defending an area? What can that defend?
Non-stim, non-combat shield Marines, maybe about 15 of them.
2 tanks, 10 Marines. You think that can only stop 15 unupgraded Marines?
I'd assume I'm unupgraded as well, and my opponent is splitting and being at least reasonably smart. But yeah, I don't have a good idea for that. Yeah, maybe it's 20
whether you both have upgrades or you both don't, it's probably going to be relatively similar. So let's ignore that part of the equation. How many Marines do we think that can stop? I mean, I think that's a lot more than 15. Maybe not an insanely much higher number, but let's say that can stop 20 Marines. I would say. And this is something you can just get a better sense for over time, right? But the important thing there is I think we were kind of conflating 2 different problems a little bit, and that's why I wanted you to be very specific there. Because you're like, you see, like, I don't know, am I safe? Am I not safe? Can I defend? Should I attack? What should I do here? And I think you're conflating indecision with what your goal was in the game with a lack of understanding of what to do. And they're related, so this makes perfect sense that you've done this. But at the same time, what I can see in this replay is basically there was a 5-minute period where you didn't know what you were doing in the game, and you basically were supply blocked for a lot of it. You weren't producing, and you weren't moving your army either, which makes sense because your army was smaller than his and he was pressuring you. But at no point did we fix that production in a big way. So the reason I've gone back in this replay, right, is because I think that there is a combination between these, but basically, like, let's go right back to 12 minutes. I think this is probably the best point where we can get the example. Okay, check it. Look at your supply here. And now let's go on 8 times speed and look at your supply. And just go to the corner of the map. Just watch your supply.
That's painful to watch.
About those 3 or 4 minutes where we hovered between 90, 95 and like 110 supply. And that's, you know, basically, so the thing is in this game, because we weren't building stuff properly, there was no right time to move out or defend. It was, well, we just needed to build more stuff first of all. And then there would have been a nice point where you had enough stuff to, you could send a drop across or send a little army across while being safe at home. But you were just outnumbered in this game at a few points, or, you know, and kind of caught off guard because it felt like you were already a little bit lost in the chaos of this game about, hey, what am I focusing on? And you kind of lost track of your macro a little bit. And lost track of those. So this is always a hard situation, but whenever you notice a big freeze up in production, and stuff like this, that usually tells you there's a big hiccup in terms of your confidence about, wait, what was my goal here? Like, was I, you know, finishing my tasks? And it might normally be, okay, I like to push with bio tank off 3 base. And usually I want to try and have all 5 barracks with the 4 reactors in the tech lab ready by that time. And I want to have, you know, my second factory on the way. And then usually after that attack gets held or we move around a bit, I then have to add the 4th command center and another starport. And that's when my 3-3 starts. And it all kind of like combines into one. There's like a mixture of having some preset idea of some moments where you like to move out in a matchup with a build order, and all that goes together. But anytime you find where you've got like, oh, I didn't spend my money for a few minutes, I was supply for a few minutes, that almost always kind of ties in with a moment where we don't really have that clear idea. So we can fix this by saying just spend your money better, and that's part of it. But we also need to have answers to those questions you said. When do I attack? When do I defend? You know, and there was a big sign there where you said, how much can I defend with? See, I moved out, and then he came in and got me. And I think that's the biggest red herring, right? Was that point there? Because the previous 5 minutes leading up to that was much bigger, right? So you were feeling indecision and what should I do and where should I do it and what should I do for minutes on end, and freezing up on your production and kind of taking a bit of damage and feeling like he was choking in. And so you were already feeling a little bit of that by hitting the supply block, and then he sieged up here, and then he got some shots with the forward vision. He had air control for some reason. I guess he had the Viking advantage. That made us uncomfortable. So our Ravens had to fly back. And then from there, it kind of piled on top and everything started to fall apart, right? But it's easy to look at this and go, well, I didn't know when to attack. And then when I did attack, he just came in and killed my shit. So I guess attacking is just always the wrong idea. And it's easy to kind of get a little bit muddled up with that. So try to just be a little bit more focused here in terms of, okay, wait a second. Let's go back 5 minutes, a long time in this game after your previous attack gets held, or around that time when it's going across, maybe not 5 minutes, probably 11 minutes, 12 minutes, somewhere around there. Fast forward a little bit. And let's talk about what our goals are. And did I actually understand what my game plan was? Like in terms of what was the build? What were the next steps with the build? Did I do them correctly? You know, at what point do I normally like to attack in this matchup, and so on and so forth. So once we clear this army, obviously this is a very chaotic early game, real easy to lose track of everything. And these are the games where you go really off the rails because you kind of like forget basic things in the chaos, right?
Yeah, I feel like what happened once I finally got a moment to breathe, which is right about now.
Yeah, this is it.
I went back and was just like, okay, what have I forgotten to do because of this? And I spent so much time, you know, I'm putting down a couple more barracks, I'm getting my upgrades started again, I'm trying to take my 3rd, trying to get in a position where he can't hurt me. Depots and some of the basic stuff just really fell, you know, I just forgot them. it looks like.
I think you did a really good job, right? With that initially, though, of like, hey, let's focus and get everything back on track. Now, don't get me wrong. I can see a bit of inefficiency in your actions where you're panicking and shit a little bit. So,
Sure, yeah.
like your starport, you lifted it, you told it to build a reactor, you told it to do something else because you changed the rally point, and you went, oh shit, go back and build the reactor up. And then your barracks are kind of building some marines. You've got SCVs that didn't queue back to mining and stuff. So don't get me wrong, there are some basic things here. Okay, even in chaotic situation, when we put down those barracks, especially after we're recovering in a situation like this, let's try to remember to queue those SCVs back to mining. Let's remember to drop mules and keep SCV producing, which you completely forgot about for a while here. Look at how much mule energy you have.
Yeah, it's done.
So if you just took another 30 seconds here to say, let's get that build back on track. Let's make sure okay, the second factory is a good idea. Let's build reactors on these barracks, drop mules, build SCVs. Okay, the natural's saturated. Let's put guys on the gas on that natural and then rally everything over to the third, drop a ton of mules there. Okay, cool. And just, if you just took a minute to sit back here, I think I'd be really happy. But we can see you're like, I don't know what the fuck is going on in this game. I need to go across the map. I killed some shit like of his. I took some pretty good fights there. Maybe it's time to fight. And the thing is, that's not a bad call in of itself. It's just that you shifted it to the top of your priority list when everything else was already chaotic. And the moment you feel chaos in the game like this, it's like the most important thing is to just get our house in order. You know, it's like the person who's got the deadline, and sometimes like if their life is that chaotic, they actually need to tidy their room before they can actually focus on that deadline, even though it seems counterintuitive. Same thing here. Is it a good time for you to go attack your opponent? Fuck yeah. It'd be great if we could be on his side of the map, even if we just siege up in front of his third and just set up an annoying position. That would be awesome. It's just like, we really need to drop mules and build reactors right now, and any APM we take away from that and put into our army is going to be like, oh shit, that's like a lower priority. So I guess if we want to bring this back, we do this really well for a moment, but needed more time.
Yeah, it's like I need so you just got punched in the face checklist.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I did half of it and forgot the other half.
Take an extra moment, I think, is a good rule, to slowly move around your production and between your bases after, at these moments. What do we always find consistently is there's workers missing off gases that have been killed or they've been pulled into a fight. There's production buildings that haven't got their add-ons. There's upgrades that haven't started. And often we forget even what our production count is at that point. We're like, am I on 3 racks or 5 racks? I can't even remember. Like, where am I right now? I've been microing against the BC and Tanks and Ravens in my natural for like 10 minutes. This is crazy. So just take that second to like go, okay, check main, do the production, check natural, put guys on gas, check third, set the rally points. Okay, now I can worry about my army. And if you're really worried about, sometimes people will go across the map because they're worried if they don't do that, their opponent's going to like drop in their mineral lines and stuff. We can obviously do things like put a few marine spotters or a few turrets on the edges just to help us feel a little bit safer. That can help. But I honestly think it's just having that mental discipline to take an extra 15, 20 seconds to just get our macro sorted. And then we can move across the map and usually achieve the same thing with our push. It's 20 seconds later, but our house is in order behind it. We're spending really well. And suddenly, like, it just allows things to come together a lot better. So just take that extra moment to get back on track. Move around your production between your bases. And yeah, get back into your build rhythm and head towards your normal goals. That brings us to another point here. So what are our standard attack timings? And this is so important for every race to kind of have some timings. So a Zerg player might have, I can attack with roach speed and 50 and a ton of roaches or 45 workers, no drones on the third. I can go off 55 workers with a 5th gas with a lot of roach ravage. I can go off 66 workers, 3 bases, and hydras out. Like they've got these attacks, and it's not like you necessarily have to do them, but you've got them there. So whenever the game's chaotic, you can just choose one. I'm going for that thing. And for us as a Terran player, we more often than not end up with like a very consistent one we go for almost every game. and that can actually be huge. So what are our standard attack timings? For you, you've got what? The 3 Reaper 2 Hellion Poke is a potential one. What else?
Yeah, I've got another one.
Upgrade complete.
It's a 240 poke. Oh, that's a 530. 2 tanks, 2 ravens, 10 marines,
Mineral
cyclone,
field depleted.
and whatever's left over from the beginning.
So 2 tanks, 2 ravens, 10 marines, 530. Awesome. That's a beautiful push. That's amazing. Past that point, because you're doing a very standard economic TvT style, big 3cc and everything like that, when do you think's a good moment from there? Because I'm imagining you probably don't have it mapped out from everything you said before.
No, yeah, after there, I kind of play by feel. Generally, what I do is behind that 530 push, I take my third. Because I feel like I've got my third,
Upgrade
and I've got, like 2 more barracks, 1 more factory. I don't know, something like 5 tanks and a healthy chunk of marines. I try to do the third push to try to harass them either on their natural or their third if I can get them into position.
So 5 tanks, lots of marines, and do you normally stay on Vikings all game, or do you swap into medevacs at a certain point?
I try to have 2 medevacs at all times just so I have the opportunity to pick up and drop somewhere if I want it. But I stay on Vikings pretty much solid.
Okay. In this game, your opponent had 8 Vikings and you had 1 at this point. Do you think we should still stay on Vikings?
That's a good question. Usually in this case, I'm a little stubborn. I'm like, I'm going to take that air back whether or not he likes it.
You can do it. You absolutely
Sometimes
can.
it works.
You've just got to be very patient with it and not fight with those Vikings until they overextend into your Marines or something like that, or land the Vikings in a fight, right? It's like a long, patient investment, yeah?
Yeah, I think in this setting it would have been a bad move because this game's too scrappy and I would have needed to throw down at least 1 more star court, if not 2.
Yeah. If playing catch up, I would say, yeah, it's advisable to just focus on medevacs and use them to counter drop, etc. Because, like, in this scenario, you just move out this huge chunk of your army, right? And it's like, anytime we're feeling a little bit contained, but it's like, oh no, I'm pretty safe and solid now at this point. It would be really nice if we just kind of could just pick up a single drop and send it across, right? Or a double drop or something like that. Just try and slide across the map and into the back of our opponent's base. We also kind of, looking at your control groups, you've got your main army and you've got your Ravens and Vikings. Now, you split an army off here, but you didn't control group it at all. So when this drop came in, we can see you kind of don't really have a set way of reacting it. Like, you send your Vikings and Ravens over to try to deal with it, which obviously we lose all our Ravens to a single dropship, which really sucks. It's really rough.
That was painful.
The thing is, when that came into a sensor tower range, our army was actually leaving our base, like at that third base that was being dropped. So check this out. At this point, we can go to your vision. Check it out. It's coming in as your units are there. And even if we didn't notice it straight away, which we obviously didn't, if we at this point could just go, oop, stim those units and bring them back, that would have dealt with it so much better, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty good at keeping these kind of side attacks on a control group. Apparently I just didn't do it this time, so maybe that's a good point to focus on later.
Yeah.
Is if I do a split, check if I control grouped it and make sure it happens.
Yeah, for sure. I think it makes a big diff. Definitely, we had some turrets up in the main, which is good at this point. But yeah, I just had that exposed edge there, the single area where he chooses to drop, unfortunately for you. But yeah, I think if we go back again, now we've got that in mind, where it's like, okay, 5 tanks, lots of marines, etc., etc. With that attack timing, normally you're going to have second factory on the way, right? Second factory on the way. 5 racks up. 3 base fully established. When you move out with your 5 tanks and lots of marines, you've got most of your production for the rest of the game. Those 5 barracks, that reacted starport, those 2 factories. So getting to that stage is really nice, right? So if we go back to 11 minutes in this game, after we defended this, I mean, we went for an opportunistic counter push, which is okay. Obviously, like I said, we should have just slowed down a little bit on it and kind of gone, whoa, let's get my base in order first. But after that stage, in hindsight now, we've got a game plan. And that game plan is keep macroing, get up 5 tanks, lots of marines, and then let's push across this map. And in the in-between, we're either very turret and sensor tower focused, or we're very marine map control focused, depending on what sort of player you are. You know, everyone has their own way of doing it. A lot of people prefer the turrets and the sensor towers. I prefer the marines out on the map and just dominate and intercept anything on the map and be much more aggressive. Other players like to, you know, have the towers and the turrets and everything stopping drops. But the important thing here is we could have been a bit more chill. Instead, I could tell we were kind of caught up in the action. We're just loading up a random drop and sending it across. Not the worst thing, but it does unfortunately get caught because we have absolutely zero map vision. 100% before sending a random drop across, I would be sending little pairs of marines out to try to get map control everywhere, right? Is that something you find yourself doing in TvT ever, or do you just kind of always forget?
I actually do that a lot. This game was just unique. I very rarely do drops like that. I just figured with how scrappy this is, he probably had no protection. So this one's unique in that.
Yeah, and it's not a bad move. It is. Scrappy games, drops have higher percentage of hitting, right? It's just, we should have done the normal thing first, right? Same thing before. That opportunistic push, it's like, well, we should have made sure our production was getting sorted as a higher priority before making that push work, right? You killed a ton of SCVs, got a big eco advantage from it, so it wasn't a bad move. It's just we were putting something else kind of down the priority list when it should have been at the top. That's all. So this kind of just helps us reorder where that priority, you know, should be in our head, and makes things a little bit clearer for you. And
yeah,
yeah,
I think that's a strong takeaway for me. Is I really need to lean back on what I know my next attack should be. And I mean, this whole move where I thought I needed to push to maintain my spot in this game was clearly a wrong move.
yeah. Marine map control, hitting your macro rhythm, etc., etc. Now, obviously, we can break it down further. We can be like, if you're being contained, set plays, send a double drop across, or send a marine tank army across, but obviously make sure our production is already smooth and we're non-stop reinforcing. Because you're always going to leave your defenses a little low at the moment you leave the base, where maybe they could jump in and take it out. But if you're pumping out more tanks and like another 2, you know, if you weren't supply blocked, you still could have had 6 tanks sieged, or, you know, another 10, 15, 20 marines there, right? You know, and it would have been able to hold on, right? Okay, cool. So like, you know, you just kind of go, all right, you know, this wasn't a bad move to move across the map here. I actually think it was a great move. We were just lacking the fundamentals underneath that layer. So, yeah, I think what we've kind of answered here is obviously we've gone very deep on it, but we started with not understanding really what our opponent's builds are. And remember at the start when I asked you what he was doing, and you said, oh, well, he did a weird one base BC thing, so I'm not sure this is the best. Let's understand the opening. Let's understand the fundamentals of like what that opening is, and try to never dismiss an opponent's build. Even if it's like a weird something or other, it's usually still going to come from one of these standard opening options, right? A place where we can read the fundamentals and go, oh, this is a one base build, and therefore, you know, this is the most important thing is, well, he's being more aggressive, I'm being more economic with the command center, I can add a bunker, right? And it's like just the basic logic of StarCraft there comes in where you're like, oh, this is like, I don't need advanced game knowledge to say he's making more units, I'm making more economy, I should build a bit of defense, right? That's pretty straightforward stuff. So if we can try to slow ourselves down in our analyses and always try to go back to those fundamentals, there's probably one of these anchoring rules we should try to think of is try to understand the core, what area is my opponent committing to? Is it economy or is it army? What are they, is it harder, more economy than me or less? Is it more army or less than me? And once you get that understanding, you can make really kind of clear decisions about what the right move is.
Makes a ton of sense.
Awesome. It's a cool base trade, dude. Do you win?
No.
So close.
I know, I almost had it. I just couldn't get production up. He's got a bunch of marines at his base, and he eventually just walks across the map.
Repair, boys. Repair. Oh, these little useless drilly shits. Do you know the hotkey for auto repair?
No, I don't.
It
Isn't it like Shift R or something like that?
Alt and whatever your hotkey is for repair.
Yeah. I think the most painful part is he comes in and barely stops me all 3 of these barracks at like 99%.
That hurts. Should have stayed up on that ramp. That was a good position. Should have just stayed up there. The general rule I find that I made in these weird situations is like always just hang out in that main and be like, all right, this army's never getting home, but hopefully it's going to stress him out, right? And I only use it if he sends everything into my base on my side of the map. Otherwise, I let it go. But cool game, man. That was a crazy game. And I think we got to analyze a lot of detailed things there. So a couple of rules to pull ourselves back to in our replay analysis from now on. Whoops. Windows noise. You can still hear me, yeah?
Yep.
Okay, it's probably the keyboard. Okay, so we've got different metrics we can always focus on. Engagements, our build, and all the tightening up of that, as well as problem situations, which arise matchup to matchup, map to map, and are often something we want to do a real impromptu rewind of, right? You play a game, what the frig just happened with X hitting me at what time? And then we can, go back and break it down a little bit. Problem arises if we really don't understand it. Always try to understand the context a little bit better. So that brings us back to analyzing replays from our opponent's point of view, understanding their build order, okay? Just taking a little bit longer to understand, wait a second, oh, they only had this much economy behind it? Oh, they really rushed this out? Or, oh, they actually had a lot more economy behind this than I thought. Trying to make sure we have some understanding. And that's really what we're aiming for above and beyond anything else. If there was one thing that kind of sits above everything else, it's understanding and being able to read in live games and replays what the army versus economy split is, right?
Yeah.
And comparing that to our own, right? So it's I always talk about it as like we've got 2 scales in the game, and in like the most standard game, like you're like, oh, you went the same CC as me on the low ground, like, say they did the same build. You got 3 Reapers and 2 Islands. All right, I'll sit back here. I won't go across the map. Let's be defensive. All right, I got my 2 Ravens, my 2 tanks, my 10 Marines. You clash. Oh, they've got 2 Ravens, 10 tanks. Okay, cool. Or at some point you kind of scan because you're like, well, we were doing the same thing. Should I commit to this 530 push? You go across and you realize when your Ravens poke into the main base, there's 5 barracks. There's no 3rd command center. Meanwhile, you have a 3rd command center. Suddenly, you kind of have we've been completely even on those scales, but now my opponent's going to be way ahead on army in the next few minutes off those 5 barracks, and I'm going to be way down on that army, of course. But I'm going to be ahead on the economy over the next few minutes. And you cut something, okay, I got to be really defensive, And likewise, it could be the opposite. You're going 5 barracks against a Protoss. You see a 3rd Nexus, 2 Forges, and a Robo, and you're like, all right, let's pull all the boys with this push. Let's not just do a 2-base biomite. Like, let's pull the boys. Let's pull 20 SCVs. Because, like, if I let this player's double upgrade Colossus kick in and 3 base of workers against my 40 SCVs, like, oh, God, we're dead. So suddenly it's like he's committing everything to economy and the tech in the later stages. Let's commit even harder to my aggression to knock him out since I'm already going for that big 2-base push. I think that's like, if we can find a way to bring back any confusing situation or any situation we're in doubt to that sort of analysis, you'll always start to find the correct path forward.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll have to start working that into my replay review because I don't think I do anything like that right now.
A lot of people don't, and a lot of people get very confused about what's happening in the game because they get too focused on what Lambo said to build roaches versus tanks or something, It's like, we miss so much understanding of the context of what's actually going on in a game if we're just thinking about compositions or we're just thinking about, oh, versus this build, you're meant to do this thing that the pros do. It's like, that's why some of the best StarCraft players are these like weirdos who get to really high level without watching, and I mean on the ladder, not pro gamers, though sometimes they do become pros, but I'm talking like they never watch pro play. They don't watch streams, they don't learn from other people's build orders, and they just play weird. Goblin is a recent pro gamer who's definitely one of them. Haas is one. I'm mentioning Protoss players. Railgan is a high-level streamer. He's a Zerg. out of the Terran players, we'd be thinking like obviously a Ruff is a big example of a streamer who just has clearly never copied anyone else in his life. And he is so goddamn efficient at these weird things that nobody else does. And sure, he's lacking some fundamentals because he hasn't tapped into that big base pool of knowledge that everybody else is learning from. But he's learnt how to analyze the game in his own way, understanding kind of certain fundamental things and breaking it down and finding his own path forward. So there's kind of this cool thing where I love tapping into the resources out there, learning from pros and like getting inspired by it. But ultimately, to become a good StarCraft player in the long run and someone who can always kind of figure out what's going wrong when the strategies aren't serving us well, when they aren't, is just try to get back to the fundamental analysis. I think old Day 9 dailies are like really good for doing that, because basically him and same with Artosis commentary of GSL is they're these people who always bring it back to fundamentals, and that's why there's nothing better than watching Artosis get really mad during 2017 when every Protoss was going Mass Phoenix Adept and every Terran kept attacking into it and trying to drop and drop and drop. And like, he's like, this is an early mid-game composition that scales terribly into the late game. It's super mobile and it's got a great anti-air. And these Terrans are like, well, the way to play right now against all the other styles is 3 barracks, drop, 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 5 barracks, drop, 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 take a third behind it, drop, 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 attack, 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 attack. And it was just so strategically wrong. Where players were just like, hinging on the Protoss being out of position to win their games. And he was getting so mad about it, even in his commentary. And it was just great to listen to because he just kept breaking down the fundamentals of what was going on, and that even pro players were playing like idiots for a solid 3 or 4 months there. But good to always bring it back to those fundamentals, man. But I think this was a good sesh. Any questions in the notes, hit me up afterwards. And just let me know when you want to set up the next one.
Will do. Thanks, man. Really appreciate it.
Awesome sauce. All right. Have a good night, man.
Take it easy. See ya.
Good luck in your practice. Awesome.